12 noon. We're live on City Line, and what a gorgeous day for this Mother's Day. Hi, I'm Jackie Hall.
And I'm B.T. Bentley. Happy Mother's Day.
Oh, thank you, B.T., and happy Mother's Day to everybody else in our audience as well, in studio and in the community. As you know, last week, City Line began its special series, Blacks at the Crossroads, with a compelling examination of blacks in economic development and leadership.
Today, in part 2 of Blacks at the Crossroads, we focus on the family.
We'll find out what areas of black family life have contributed to the strength and stability of the black community and which areas have not.
What has led to family breakups and the emergence of the increasing numbers of single-parent households.
And we want to learn what it will take to heal the split in the black family.
But first, let's take a look at what our City Line cameras found when they went out into the community of Baltimore to find out more about black families at the Crossroads.
NAS, resurrect through the birth of my seed. Queensbridge, make everything right. Get yours, nigga, when I flow for the street.
Who else could it be?
NAS, resurrect through the birth of my seed. Queensbridge, make everything right.
Baby girl, she's always talking, name dropping, hanging late, drinking, smoking, hates her baby daddy, crave shopping, eat popping, ecstasy taking, won't finish her education, best friend she keeps changing, stuck with limitations, lusting men, many hotels, Fendi Chanel, with nothing in her bank account, frontin' she do well, her kid suffers, he don't get that love he deserve, he the sun, she the earth, single mom, even worse, no job, never stay working, mad purdy, shorty they call her the brain surgeon, time flying, she the same person, never matures. All her friends married, doing well. She's in the streets, yakking like she was 12. Honey is 27, argues, fights, selfish in her own right for life. Guess she's in her second childhood.
When I flow for the street,
who else could it be?
NAS, resurrect through the birth of my seed. Queensbridge, make everything right. Get yours, nigga, when I flow for the street.
Who else could it be?
NAS, resurrect through the birth of my seed. Queensbridge, make everything right.
Hard. I mean, it's, you know, it's just like a race, a rat race, and you have to almost be in the front of the line to get there. So it's just hard.
Earl May Green was referring to black families trapped in the central city. It seems apparent that if the black family as a unit is in trouble, then no one member goes unscathed. According to Earl May Green, a family counselor for 17 years, all members in the family are suffering and unable to function effectively. Mothers, she says, are younger, less mature, and unprepared to provide the nurturance and support to their children and mates. As a result of their own frustrations, these mothers are likely to focus more on their own needs and less on the needs of others in the family. But this self-centeredness, Ms. Green says, is not without a price. As a result, the children also suffer because they are often left pretty much on their own, unsupervised and unsocialized, left to get involved in negative activities. And black fathers, whether unable or unwilling to provide for their families, often leave the home, leaving women to care for the children alone. Many changes in the black family structure are reflective of those taking place in the society in general and in all families nationwide. However, the changes appear even more devastating to blacks because of the disproportionately high percentages. The series in the Evening Sun, entitled Homes Without Fathers, reported, in many Baltimore neighborhoods, black households with fathers have disappeared, replaced by an unprecedented number of black families headed by women caught in a cycle of poverty. Branded racist by black leaders, the Sun Paper series described many black neighborhoods as made up of women and children and street corner men. But to many, like Morgan State University professor James Jones, it is the system which forces black men to abandon their families.
Well, I think personally this society has been detrimental to black men. Black men, and myself included, have been singled out. And it's obvious that the powers that be don't want us to have strong two-parent families because we would produce children who were strong enough to deal with the problems in society.
I don't want to say all of them are just standing on corners or into drugs or trying to make a living just by being on the corner. I think there are some fathers that try, but there are no jobs. The job market is real low for the male that wants to support their families. There's no jobs, so they're just there. They're around the neighborhood, and there are some that are in the family, but they're just not active. They're just not active. They're pretty much out of the picture.
Because of this and other factors, in 1983, the National Urban League called the decay of the black family the single greatest problem facing blacks in America. According to recent statistics, 1 out of every 2 black marriages, or 50%, end in divorce. Last year in Baltimore, nearly 75%, and in some areas of the city, as many as 95% of the black births were to unwed women, mostly teenagers. For many of these mothers, the impact is devastating, causing frustrations, permanent entrapment, and the beginning of generational poverty. Many women never break out, but some do, as in the case of Vanessa Sturgis, now 34 years old and the mother of 2 children, 19 and 13.
It was really difficult because, you know, the situation coming up in a low-income family, being a troubled child myself, really, like I said, not knowing what to expect, so it makes it really complicated, you know.
Another negative factor which threatens black families is the high poverty rate, not only for single mothers but for blacks in general. The 1986 Black Needs Assessment Project report revealed that 70% of the black female-headed households are on welfare and live at or below the poverty level. Traditionally, the black family was as solid as a rock, steeped in a strong religious faith, a strong work ethic, and strong family ties that often extended to neighbors, friends, and even to strangers. In the past, the family unit was the mainstay of the black community. And although very few black families looked like the Nelsons, Andersons, and the Cleavers, there were and still are many that resemble Cliff and Claire Huxtable of The Bill Cosby Show. One such example is the Jones family. Jem, a Morgan art professor, and Mary, a counselor with the Maryland Committee for Children, appear the perfect American couple, with 2 children, son Jade and daughter Jerry, 1 dog, and 2 cats. They list among the secrets to their 27-year marriage hard work and the commitment to working together as a team to solve even the small problems. They acknowledge the strength of their marriage lies in the positive examples provided by both sets of parents.
I came from a very close-knit family. My dad's been dead now for about 18 years, but I still have my mother. In fact, I don't know what I'd do without my mother, and she really helps me with a lot of problems. You know, sometimes when I feel, well, I can't make it, then I'll call my mother and I have enough steam to go on for another day. So my family is very important, my sisters, my brother, and we really enjoy being around each other. And like Jimmy said, when you get a little older and you realize how precious life is, and you really value your family.
Our parents had very good marriages, and they were very effective with their families. Our parents grew up in a day when they didn't have the advantages that we have. They had limited educations, but they were able to do so much with what they had. And that makes really this generation look especially bad. I don't want to go on a soapbox, but I think that's what's wrong with most families. They have severed those relationships with the support system that we all have to have.
The examples of families like the Joneses indicate that many black families are still alive and well and living in America. But at the opposite end of the spectrum is the growing number of inner city families, dysfunctional and trapped in a cycle of poverty. Families which in 1987 are at the crossroads.
We're going to find out more about Black Families at the Crossroads. And we come back to speak with our panel of 6 experts and a special studio audience who will lend their expertise to our discussion today.
We also want to hear from you, so call us with your questions and comments as we continue Blacks at the Crossroads. Focus on the family here, live on Baltimore's City Line.
Welcome back to part 2 of Blacks at the Crossroads with our concentration today on the family. We've assembled a panel of 6 experts in the field of family relationships, and we're going to introduce them to you now so that we can begin our discussion. First is Ruth Masinga, who is Secretary of the Maryland Department of Human Resources. Next is Richard Rowe of the Baltimore Urban League. Next is Janice Stevenson, a family counselor and child psychologist. Next to her is Vivian Washington, a consultant for the Baltimore Council on Adolescent Pregnancy, Parenting, and Pregnancy Prevention. Also, Russ Ford, who's president of Baltimore Family Life Center, Incorporated. And finally, Jane Johnson, vice president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. I'd like to welcome our guest today.
Thank you for joining us here on City Line. We'd like to ask each of you right now for your assessment. Is the Black family in trouble in 1987? And let's start with Ruth Masinga.
I believe that the struggle for Black families, and particularly poor Black families, is that of how the Black community can help them, can support them in meaningful ways. I think that is where the Black community and those families are focused, and I think to the extent that that is not resolved, they're in trouble.
And I think that Black families are having its share of difficulties caused, I believe, by cultural and historical, I call it amnesia, and also too many loved sons and raised daughters.
Dr. Stevenson.
I think the Black family is under attack today, both from within and without. We are giving away our identity and our strengths just as fast as it's being taken away from us.
Vivian Washington.
Our families, I believe, are the most precious things that we have today, and I think all of us need to work to support parents and what they're trying to do with their children.
Ross Ford.
I think that the Black family is able to make the changes that are necessary. The strengths are there, and the rest of us have to get behind the family.
Jane Johnson.
I suppose I agree that the Black family may indeed be in critical difficulty, but I'm persuaded that it's not incurable. I think I don't want to consider this maybe as being the crossroads because it suggests a certain permanence, and because I think the crisis is so deep, I'd rather think it's on a upward spectrum with a major stop.
Exactly. You say it's on an upward spiral. What do we have positive to look at? I mean, we've been hearing so much about the negative aspects of the Black family of late. What's positive? Well,
one of the things that I suspect and I've always felt is that Black families must avoid, Black individuals must avoid judging themselves negatively by someone else's definition of themselves. And I suspect and fear very much that Black people often start to define themselves by how people who are hostile to them define them. So I suppose that when and if, and I know it does happen, Black people care about themselves, as they certainly should, that we will see a reemergence of the kind of health that will help our families heal.
Ross, do you agree that we often examine ourselves by the standards that others impose upon us?
I think that I'm a family therapist, so I get a chance to work with individual families in the process of healing themselves. And I think that those families are looking at their strengths, and that's the kind of help that they need, that the families themselves are not negative toward themselves, that we need to strengthen the families who are working on themselves.
But wouldn't you say that most of the families that you work with haven't yet realized or identified the fact that they have a problem that needs assistance such as yours?
Well, you know, what I'm saying is that families recognize that they have pain. They also, you know, just by pointing out to them, recognize that they have strengths. and they're able and willing to move, and that you know, part of our problem is that there's an impression that families cannot get it together, and that families should be blamed for the situations that they're in.
Let's just look at one of the statistics that was mentioned in the report, and it is the high divorce rate among blacks. What is going to be the fallout? What is the fallout of that kind of 50% failure rate of male-female relationships in a marital situation? Dr. Stevenson.
One of the things that I'm aware of that I hear from a lot of women now is that one possible fallout is that the black family will change the definition of it and the structure of it, along with the expectations of the mates within the marital relationship, so that women are demanding a different kind of behavior and a different kind of attitude from their men. Men are demanding a different kind of attitude and behavior from the women, and that will have a ripple effect down to the children, because the parents will be role modeling a different kind of behavior than has occurred at any point in the history of the black family. So one real clear fallout is that the family structure and the definition of roles will be redefined.
With that change of role definition and so forth, what happens to the unity and the cohesiveness of the community? I mean, we're talking about an already existing confusion, and then we're talking about new roles for everyone. What's the prospect?
I think it's going to pose some very serious problems if it's not abated, if certain things are not done to help individuals and to help men and women understand those changes and how those changes can affect the unity. I look at the family, the nuclear family, as the microcosm, if you will, of what's happening in the larger black community. And as the smaller unit has its problems, I think we find the same problems exist in the larger unit. So we have to deal with that nuclear unit and help individuals understand the changes, understand the effects of those changes, and so that we can hopefully bring the community together.
Ruth,
Go ahead.
Vivian Washington.
At the core also, I think, is the fact that we have to first have each individual learn how to value and respect self. And I think out of that, then what happens is that you have a kind of mutual respect growing for not only members of families, but members of communities.
But isn't that a catch-22? If you don't have the unit, the family unit intact that teaches this, that reinforces it, that nurtures it, how can the individuals then develop it?
I think
I don't believe, my experience tells me that the nuclear family is not the issue. It's the kinship group that's the issue.
Yes.
It's, well, what some people have called in the past the extended family. And we need to look at what is really happening in the community and what is really happening with families, and not to judge it as negative, but to help it to work by affirming what men are doing, by affirming what the extended system is doing, not by saying that you're not in a certain shape, so therefore you are not a family.
How do you reaffirm, or how do you affirm a situation where you have babies raising babies, where you have fathers who take no responsibility toward their offspring and try to make something positive?
But there's always something to affirm in a family. A family living together has certain strengths. They're always there. There's always a sense of love, irrespective of the problems. That's what you affirm in order to have those things overcome the negative situation that you're talking about.
And I think you positively affirm the obligations within the kinship group. One of the things that we have, I think, traditionally experienced, and it has been a strength of black families, is the kinship group, the neighborhood's affirmation of obligation, the sense of reciprocal responsibility one to another. And that means saying some of the hard things that need to be said about support, about obligation. And I think that's one of the struggles that black families are grappling with.
What's really happening is that there's this belief that we've got to go and tell these families that they're not supporting, that the men, they're not doing
exactly.
The reality is that when you work with the family, that sense of wanting to support children comes out of the family system itself. I don't have to go and tell a man, hey, you're not taking care of your children. In a family setting, which is family therapy, that sense of wanting to support one's own children becomes alive. There is no need for the professionals in this community to come down on the families the way they have done so in the past.
Okay, let's pick up on that after we take a break. We're going to take a break right now. We'll be back after these messages. Stay with us.
kids are pretty much on their own now, and I think the kids are going to really suffer. The kids are going to be into trouble. I think we're going to have more younger kids that are placed outside of the home, that are going to be placed in some type of protective environment, like juvenile services, more that type of thing with the kids. More pregnant teenage girls, more the teenage boys becoming fathers, and more so bragging about it, not getting jobs, not being responsible enough to accept responsibility as to what they should do, not knowing what to do and where to go.
Now here's this week's community calendar.
Hello, my name is Geraldine Grandison. Stop Teenage Pregnancy invites you to attend a fashion show and supper on Wednesday, May 20th, beginning at 5 p.m. at the 32nd Street Plaza. The evening will include a fashion show by Donna Morsley and Company, as well as a light supper, live entertainment by Miss Tracy Harrison, and much more. Proceeds will benefit Stop Teenage Pregnancy, a local group of teen parents band together to fight teenage pregnancy. For tickets and further information, call 323-1754.
If your group or organization would like to announce an event, please write us in care of City Line, WJZ-TV, Television Hill, Baltimore, Maryland, 21211, or call us for further information at 466-0013 between the hours of 9 and 5. We're back live on City Line talking about Blacks at the Crossroads, a part of our series. Today's focus is on the family. And Jane Johnson, just after going into the break, there was something that you wanted to say about something that
transpired. A couple of points that I want to make about the family. I think the first thing to understand is that the image of the mother and the father who works, the mother who stays home, takes care of children, simply does not apply to most American families, perhaps maybe 10% or fewer. And I suspect that when we talk about family, that's still kind of what we're thinking about. I know, and you know, that in the black family, it's always been aunt and uncle and grandmother and neighbor, and it has to still be, especially since so many of our families are being formed by children, having children we know very much about. And then we immediately go into a posture of saying to young men, be responsible about being a parent to these children. That's essential nonsense. These young children cannot be parents, one of the most difficult tasks that we give to any human being. So I think that our responsibility is to help avoid to the degree that we can having our families formed in that way. But more important to understand that all of us have got to reach out and parent all of the children in our community.
In Washington, you had that.
I want to add to that because I was going to say that we know that we have many young people who are becoming parents at a younger age. However, we cannot bemoan the fact that even as we work on trying to help other young people recognize that this does not have to be an option in order to prove the value of oneself, that we give support to these young parents, just as has been said, through other groups, outside groups, helping them as they try to carry this very large responsibility.
Is there the possibility of stemming the tide of the out-of-wedlock births among teenagers? Okay. I mean, do we just simply begin to just say, well, this is going to happen, now let's find out how we work with it?
No.
I haven't really wanted to address that.
My answer to that is the very first point that I made. We have to begin to help young people value self and know that you are such an important human being and that you make a decision, I do not have to be a parent in order to prove my value or my self-worth, because I have it within myself. And we all have to work on this to help the young person accomplish that goal.
And we do have to understand that in our society, our youngsters are perhaps more vulnerable than any to the kinds of stimulation towards being a man by being sexual, being a woman by having a child, those kinds of images. Also recognizing that in a significant percentage of cases that young people become parents, they are attempting to fill a void that's left by a lack of nurturing.
And I
so
heard
we're
that
talking
over
about
and over in the
cycle.
series.
And we've got to break that cycle. So long as our young people are undereducated, under-nurtured, and have all these lacks and voids in their ego-building experiences, the choice of coupling and for whatever comfort it promises and bearing a child is going to be, it's an outcome of our circumstance.
Okay, let's speak with one of our our audience at home. We've invited folks to call in at 481-1313. Hello, you're live on City Line.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm calling in because I've been on both sides of this situation. I've been a teenage mother and been single parenting for several years. And within the last 5 years, I have gotten married. And there's a distinct difference, not only from a financial aspect, but an emotional aspect of being married with a family because of the support system that's there. And it's an adjustment not only for myself to be married and having men in the home, but also for the children to adjust to that situation. And I think this is what makes it more difficult trying to adjust. But we have been married for 5 years, and we're planning on staying that way. But there definitely are adjustments to be made. But being married with a family is so important, and it's much better for my children, myself, by having someone there that can relate to my problems, the kids' problems, and we're able to relate to each other. And for him as a black male, it's been very difficult. Job-wise, it has been difficult. But me still giving him the support he needs to keep trying, and him giving me the support. I think that's very important and very rare.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for the caller.
Hold on, Carl. Hold on, Carl.
I'd like to ask the caller what efforts are she and her mate going to put forth to make sure that their marriage lasts, because she said we're going to make sure that it stays together. And if we go into the marriages assuming that simply because we want them to or simply because we love each other that they're going to stay together forever, then we deny the fact that marriage is a lot of work, just like parenting is a lot of work for which we don't receive a lot of training.
Caller, could you hear that question?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I think, number one, it has to be coming from God. You have to have some emotional support. I think a lot is said, and a lot of religion is left out of your family. And without that support from God, and turning to God, number one, for those questions that cannot be answered between myself, my family, my children. We have conferences, family conferences with each other to solve problems. We elicit my parents, his parents. It's a lot together, but number one is the belief in God.
Okay, well, thank you very much, caller.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, Richard?
Yeah, something that was said earlier about stemming the tide, especially as it pertains to teen pregnancy. I think that what our community does sometimes is send double messages. On the one hand, it says this is wrong, but then we condone, the teen pregnancies by holding baby showers and by doing all those kinds of things. I think we really have to send a very clear message to our young children that they have to delay certain things for the best interest of the whole community, and not just for the individual selves. And then we need to smother our children with love, and we don't do that. If we did that, then I think they would opt to do something other than prove their manhood, womanhood, or try to tell us that they need someone to love by having children.
But you're going to get parents who say, I'm not loving my child. I love my child. I shower my child with love all the time. And yet, when we take a look at ourselves as individual persons who are parents, we don't see that we knock our children down when we ridicule and humiliate them out in public and in private. And when we put them through such pain and such chaos that they can't survive, even if they wanted to, they have to defend themselves by pushing people out. And so we deny that we're raising children who don't trust and who don't feel safe and who don't know how to survive in the society, because they can't survive in that time when they're alone. But these parents, and I am also a parent, so I from our own perspective, can address this too. We're not aware of the language we use with our children, of the stress of the disciplinary tactics that we use with our children. We're not aware of the modeling that we provide in our relationships with our children. And we talk about this stuff a lot, but we don't get down to the concrete stuff of it, that within the families and within the relationships, we're not practicing what we preach.
A lot of what you said, and you said earlier, I think goes to the whole question of parenting and having relationships being a lot of work. And I think a lot of what we don't appreciate, any of us, is that hard work comes through the thoughtful activities that the caller talked about, and being willing to risk. Often parents have to understand that they've got to be willing, and I think black parents, particularly as a black parent, being willing to risk examination with your child, with your mate, of what's working well and what's not. And I think that that's a place where the community supports can be helpful.
Right.
The opportunities.
But the families don't trust the community supports.
That is true.
They don't trust that we, the professionals, can provide anything, because after all, we've sold out. They don't trust that the other providers can do anything because they don't understand us, and therefore, and when they don't trust the extended family because they're too far away, and after all, they're kind of screwed up too. So what are they left with? Right. And so when you live in a
So what are they left with? What are they left with?
Those things aren't real in the family. When you sit down with the family, all these overwhelming problems that we're talking about, all these things that are impossible, seem to disappear. Every family deserves support, irrespective of what form or shape it takes.
But Richard Rose says they're left with dynasty.
Okay, they're not left with dynasty. Within those families, there are love, there's the same kind of concern, and need the same kind of support and respect. Every child needs the same thing.
Okay.
Every new parent needs to have a shower. You can't have a shower for only those parents
Ross,
who are married.
hold that for just a moment. We're going to come back to that, and we're also going to ask Richard to explain that dynasty point. But we're going to take a break. Continue to call us here at 481-1313. We'll be back in just a moment. The discussion is going on as I'm speaking, in fact, in the audience, but we're going to get to some of these members of the studio audience. But we have someone here now who wants to make a comment and even ask a question.
I was here 2 weeks ago, and I mentioned to Jackie that I see children daily with dead eyes. This shouldn't be. Dr. Stevenson, you commented that they don't trust the professionals. So we in the community who are knowledgeable, who can help, we have to get in there and bridge the gap.
Right.
Where do you live, and what do you mean by dead eyes?
Dead eyes. My sister, whom I visit frequently, lives in the Murphy homes.
Yes.
And it's a tragedy. I think every person should have to come there, professional and non-professional, and to see the conditions that families live in, that children have to live in. All children need love. It's the most important thing in the world. When you don't get it, then you have to turn to the streets. And in order for the black family to survive, we have to stop it. No one's coming in on a big white horse and change and help and pull us out. We have to pull each other out.
And let's not pretend that it's not taking place, because the number of black children who, this is sort of a catch-22, but the number of black children who are entering foster care by report from neighbors, by report from teachers, by report from other officials and other people in the community is increasing. This is unfortunate because it means that the foster care system has its own problems, and I'll leave that to Ruth completely. But it's fortunate in that it shows that other people around are seeing the children have dead eyes, and that doesn't need to take place, and the children are being hurt unnecessarily, and the people who are expected to take care aren't, for whatever reasons that they have going on in their lives. There are increasing resources to help with the family situation.
What do we mean by dead eyes?
It means a pain so intense that the life has gone out and that the hope isn't there anymore, and the childhood has been taken away because of the trauma of having to get through day-to-day life.
Jackie, we talk a lot about children needing love, and that goes without question. We all do, and let's not just talk about children. But they also need decent places to live. I mean, we live in a society that is very materialistic, and that's what they see. And even if they didn't see it, they deserve to be housed. I mean, homelessness, we have families living on the streets of major metropolitan areas and some not so major. And they always say, well, those are mental hospital dischargees, and the fact of the matter is most of them make up people who can't get affordable housing. People deserve to have adequate food and health care and education and other kinds of stimulation. And those are the kind of things that also pick up dead eyes and, more importantly, stimulate the creativity that we all look back to in terms of our culture and our history.
Okay, we're going to go back to our phone lines now. Hello, you're live on City Line.
Hi, I just wanted to say one thing. I'm a white male from the suburbs who happens to enjoy your program, and I guess I look at a lot of this from the outside looking in, and I'm not exposed to a lot of these problems as far as poor housing or food or whatever, lack of education. And I guess my question would be to anyone on the panel or for anyone is that what can I or what can people in the white community do, if anything, to help to alleviate these problems or to make the economic conditions different? Not as part of a bureaucracy necessarily, but as an individual who has limited resources.
Before our audience answers that, I think that you've taken the first step, which is by acknowledging the fact that the problem exists. There are a lot of folks in the outside communities, outside of the city areas, who really don't recognize the problem. I think that's one of the...
Or they think the problem's over there and it doesn't impact on them. What do you think, professionals, experts on the panel?
Adopt a family.
Yes. Adopt a family, meaning what? I mean, it sounds simplistic.
Adopt a black family that's struggling. This is a gentleman who has resources, evidently, and he can make those resources available to a family.
How would you go about that? What would that entail?
He can offer his resources through Big Brothers, for one thing.
Right.
He can offer his resources as a foster parent, for another thing. He can also offer his volunteer services to a lot of the agencies that work in the black community that use volunteerism as their primary means of support. And there are an awful lot who need drivers to carry handicapped and senior citizens around to receive the resources they need. There are services that provide meals to black citizens who can't come out of their homes. Those are three specific things he can do.
And he can encourage in his business, in his contacts in his community, the entry of black families and particularly black men into jobs. I mean, one of the critical things that we've all talked about is the lack of tangible financial resources within the black community and within the black family. One of the things he can do is see himself as an agent to help promote a family's use and entry into the workforce in the suburbs. And if that means transporting families, if that means encouraging, talking it up, I think that would be very helpful.
Okay, Carl, you had another comment?
Be concrete in that way.
I guess I'm thinking in terms of, I, for instance, am young and very fortunate in that I've completed college and I own my own business and so forth, but I'm so far away from Baltimore in particular, or any other major city for that matter, that as far as closing up a business and just coming down and getting involved in those kind of programs is very
How many
awkward.
black employees does he have in his business wherever it is?
I beg your pardon?
How many black employees do you have in your business wherever it is? You don't have to live in the city to be a big brother to somebody in the city. Big Brothers is crying for males.
Right. Well, part of it too would be the problem of, say, people that can do this type of work.
You have asked us for solutions, and we have given you some, and now your task is to accept them.
Okay.
You have asked us, what do we think is the help that we need from you? And now you're telling us why you can't do it. So maybe we need to stop giving you suggestions and let you tell us what it is you'd like to offer to us to help us with our problem.
But also,
well, we're limited because, number one, I mean, a small business that maybe hires one person that's in word processing or something that's a friend of yours is one thing, but a major corporation, for instance, that can hire, many more people, that's a different story altogether.
Let me just offer this, and caller, we're going to have to move on.
Okay.
Perhaps you can do what is done with the overseas programs of adopting families. Maybe it's just a matter of financial support, where you can do something on a monthly basis or whatever, or a timely basis, and make that a commitment, because that could go very, very far. And if you're limited by space and distance and time and so forth, at least you're doing something, and it doesn't require you're moving in that direction.
Jackie, this one quick thing.
Thank
He
you,
can
caller.
contribute his money to the Urban League or the other organizations and agencies that do support.
Or he can do this. I mean, there was a program that highlighted this person named, his last name was Lane. And what he did, he provided money, scholarship money for children. If he wants to do something, we understand that he can't close his business down, but he can find a family.
So there are ways.
That's right. That's
okay.
right.
We're going to take a break and come back. We're going to continue with our discussion. Continue to call us here at City Line as we explore Blacks at the Crossroads focus on the family.
Welcome back to part 2 of City Line's special series on Blacks at the Crossroads, this time focusing on the family. We're going to talk a little bit about solutions, but right now we want to talk to a gentleman who's on the line that might give us a better insight into one of the problems. Hello, you're live on City Line. Hello?
Yes, my wife and I have been married for about 9 years, and we've gone through a lot of financial problems that, where I've lost my job and financial role has been totally reversed. And for a whole year I was out of work, and my wife and I went through a lot of problems. I was wondering if the panel had any kind of counseling to kind of help that situation out, because of the fact that sometimes when the roles get reversed and the woman's making more money than the man, or he's out of work, can't get unemployment, it becomes difficult within the family, where it gets to a point where we almost divorced, but we made it through that. Now we kind of split all the bills down the middle, but we still try to go on and raise our family. I was wondering, because we tried to find counseling, couldn't really find any. Why isn't there any for the family when they get to that point in time?
Ross Ford has a program that he...
Well, there is Baltimore Family Life Center, but besides that, there are many good black mental health workers in the city of Baltimore. There's Baltimore Family Life Center that specializes in working with the black family, but you need to understand, I'm glad you're coming forward asking for help, that there is help available, and that black families and black couples are making themselves known to need this help. And I really appreciate this gentleman accepting that some help is needed, because there's a shift in family structure. Not that there's anything wrong with him, anything wrong with his family, but like my family, like your family, we go through changes, and to sit down and look at the changes that we're going through is a sign of strength.
What other resources are available?
I think one thing we also have to give men the right to do is to be unemployed. I mean, it's hard enough for black men to feel like as a man he's lost his manhood. He's at greater risk for not having a job than any other man in the country. So that I want him to work, and I want him to be able to help his wife support his family, but we have to give him permission not to feel badly about himself as a struggling human being because he's not working.
While we're talking about this type of assistance and everything, how do we get some of the people who need it most to come out and get it? You say that the assistance is there, the counseling is there, but there are a lot of folks out there with problems that either don't recognize it, don't come forward with it, and really go without
within
help.
the family, one of the easiest ways, one of the most available ways to recognize that your family is in need of assistance is to watch your children, because frequently they are the most sensitive to the problems of the family, especially to the problems of the parents, and will be the barometer for issues in the family. If your child is acting up in school, and they hadn't been before, although if they are anyway, if your child is suddenly withdrawn, if your child is showing any kind of changes in their level of functioning, then that's a sign that there's something around that child that's negatively affecting him. Get some help. There are many resources. Baltimore Urban League does a lot of work with single black men and with single mothers of
raising male children.
Right, raising, and then Family Life Center has I've referred to them a lot of times. You can find out who the black professionals are by calling the Black Mental Health Alliance, because they have a listing of the majority of the black professionals in the city, and can give you location and discipline and phone numbers to reach people. There are resources out there. You can call any of the professional referral services that are in the phone book. Ask for someone black.
I would like to
I would just want to say that again before you started. My point was not, we've established that there's help out there. How do we get the people to come out and get the help?
Could I make a comment on that? I think the problem is that we make people feel so guilty or inadequate if they have to ask for help. And we need to say to people, all of us have problems. And if you're having a problem, it's a sign of strength to be able to say, I'm going to go and do something about it. But we tend to make people feel badly if there's something that they ask for.
In the time that we have remaining, let's focus now on solutions. You've talked about the resources that are available. What are some other solutions? Richard, I know you work a great deal with black men. What are the messages to give to black men to make them feel good about themselves, to do what is necessary in support of children and wives?
Well, I think they have
or
to,
mates.
Some of the messages that we share, or messages that we share with the black men, is that they need to understand that what's happening to them is not their fault in total. That there are attempts by the larger community to stifle their development. They need to understand that. They need to understand, too, that they can share, that they can love, that they can be sensitive and responsible and still be a man. And so the messages that we're trying to share with men is that we need to change our definitions of what being a man is, especially in 1987, because we have black women who are going on to college, who are finishing. They don't need us to take care of them. They need us to be with them.
In fact, some will tell you that, won't they?
That's right, and so that's right. And so we need to have our, and that's why I work a lot with the younger boys, because if we tell them and encourage them to do some of the things that we should be doing today, then I think we can stem the tide.
What other solutions do we have to look forward to?
In that regard, I think in terms of the family and sex roles, I would like to make a real plea for families of young children to start dealing with young boys and young girls about their sexuality with all of its glorious and potentially inglorious potential, and not wait until they're 16 and 17 years old and expect them to make remarkably fine, well thought out decisions. Help youngsters make decisions in advance. In Baltimore, there's a fine Planned Parenthood affiliate that's eager to work with parents, and I just urge black parents and all parents in particular to start dealing with your youngsters about their sexuality when they're young. It makes them less vulnerable to exploitation or to becoming exploiters.
I heartily agree with that, and I think one of the resources that can help particularly young families, adolescent parents, struggle with that are family support centers that are cropping up throughout the city. They are in community-based resource areas and churches. They can help in helping young people figure out how to parent and deal with their own. Yeah.
Okay, we're back for the final segment. Before we continue with solutions, we'd like to remind you that next week will be part 3 of Blacks at the Crossroads, dealing with education. And the week following that, we will be preempted. But on the 31st, we will conclude the series with a summary looking at Blacks at the Crossroads in terms of education, leadership development, economics, and education as a whole.
And the family as well. So if you'd like to be a member of our studio audience, you can call now for reservations at 481-1313 and reserve a space in the studio.
That's right. Now we want to, again, one more time address our panelists and our audience to see if we can find some solutions. We've talked a lot about the problems. We've offered some answers. But let's see if we can summarize and come up with some workable solutions that people listening today, watching today, can put to use right away.
Start with Ruth Masinga.
I think one of the critical solutions is to make sure that we can hook up families, particularly men, into the workforce. And I think one of the things we've got to do is keep working at that. We've got to encourage the economic development agencies and businessmen to reach out, and reciprocally, we've got to help family members reach out to get into the mainstream.
Okay, Richard Rowe.
Something else I think we need to do, and that is to help teach our young children who they are. To help them to understand that they have a proud history, that they come from proud people, and I think that's very, very important in the long run, so that they understand that they didn't start their history didn't start in slavery and all of those kinds of things, but they have a very rich and proud history.
I'd like to shift the focus a bit more to the individual and underscore the fact that while we are all black in this discussion, we are also persons, and the persons are essentially in pain and hurting and helpless with that pain. Don't be afraid of that, because if we're afraid to dream, if we're afraid to entertain possibilities, then we won't be able to move beyond that point, and the blackness won't make any difference because the person will stay in pain.
Okay.
Vivian Washington.
I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Geraldine Grandison who has formed a group of young teen parents to work with other youngsters, and to say that more and more, I think when young people talk to young people about the problems involved in parenting, a great deal can be accomplished. And I just want to congratulate her and say we hope you will continue to do more.
Beautiful.
I think families can help themselves by looking at each other and, put it simply, love ye one another.
I think I'd like to see every organization, particularly black organization, make the survival of the black family the centerpiece of their programming. Churches, sororities, community-based organizations, and reach out and touch each other and not turn loose until we have turned this corner.
Okay, let's go to our studio audience. You have some suggested solutions.
Well, yes, I'd like to see some of these black professionals actually in the black neighborhoods, some decentralization of services. I don't want to have to go downtown and look for you or know someone who can tell me how to find you. Come to my neighborhood. Come to my neighborhood.
Okay, let's get some more solutions.
Well, I think that the survival of the black family has to begin in the black family. I come from a strong family filled with much love, and I'm just thankful to both of my parents that they've given me everything that I've needed, and they've made me want to strive on for bigger and better things.
Great. Let's try you next, Dan.
I think the most important thing is that we have to first teach our kids when they're young, before they even learn how to talk, self-respect and self-love. We can't love another being if we don't love ourselves, and that we need to teach our kids that material items aren't life, that there's more to life than being able to drive a BMW, wear designer clothes, that we have to teach them values and morals, get them off the street corners and back in the churches and on their knees praying to God, because that is our Almighty, and that's where we can begin to work with it.
Would you stand? Let's stand.
Yes, in addition, I'm in harmony with this young lady. I feel that if we have a machine or a computer that breaks down and it needs to be repaired, then we would want to get somebody who knows what they're doing, who knows something about that machine to repair it. So how much more so our Creator, since He is our Maker, we need to go back to the Bible and learn exactly what God expects of us from our individual roles, and see to it as family heads that these things are carried out.
Okay, let's try it here. You want to stand? Stand, please.
Okay, I believe that the lady that was talking about the community, educating the community, well, they have to, in order for the people to come out without feeling threatened by the professionals, they need to come in or have some kind of base where the community people can be educated, so that they can go in their community and help the people that are at risk.
So people who understand and can talk the same language.
Right, they live that experience.
Jackie, it's important to point out that a lot of the suggestions that people are raising